And I will say that I'm a therapist who has been to therapy. And so I have definitely had to grapple with some of these questions. And I will say that I am a person who has at least a time or two not felt like having the conversation. I'm just, it's okay to be like who you are and where you are and be transparent. And so if you just don't want to go, then don't go. And recognize that this is an opportunity for you to practice a skill set that's really important to your life. And so why not? Why not? Hello, I'm Macy. Welcome to my corner of the internet. I am a licensed clinical social worker talking to you about therapy and life. And so today I am coming to you with a question I got. And so the question is, how do I know if it's time for a new therapist? And I jotted down some notes, so I might be glancing at it here and there. But how do I know if it's time for a new therapist? And I think this is a great question, so I want to unpack a little bit. First thing, everybody is not for you as far as, your temperament, your personality, what you like, who you get along with. You can have respect for everybody, but everybody is not ultimately going to resonate with you deeply, and that's okay. And when you're approaching the therapy process, it can be very tempting to think you're going to have that right away. And you may or you may not. And I think something to consider, though, is that building rapport and getting to know someone or getting comfortable in this space is normal. So when you're thinking about, getting adjusted to a new therapist or how you're feeling about moving through sessions, especially if you are a person who is new to talking about their feelings, it's important that you give yourself some time to get comfortable so you know truly if this space is for you or not. Now, that doesn't, there are exceptions to everything, so that doesn't mean, for instance, if you outright feel unsafe or disrespected, that you continue to be in that space. That's not what I'm saying. And there is a natural sense of dis-ease or discomfort that you experience when you're moving out of your comfort zone to try something new. And so allow yourself to move through that. Don't allow that to be a hindrance to you, because anything that you try that is new, anything that you try that is foreign to you, is going to produce some sort of discomfort or uncertainty because it is new. And so giving yourself at least 4 sessions, I think, is a good place to start, especially because the first 1 to 2 sessions are often history gathering, so you're not necessarily talking as much about present day, depending on the type of therapy that you are receiving. And so that is something to consider. Now, okay, again, the question is, how do I know if it's time for a new therapist? So considering the rapport, how long have I given myself to get to know them? And then what has happened? So overall, I'm going to be posing some questions to you to consider that I think will be helpful to you in unpacking that for yourself, because ultimately you have the answer and it's okay to trust yourself. And so what has happened that brought you to this reflection point, right? What is causing you to question whether or not you want to continue with this particular person or not? Are you questioning continuing with this person or therapy in general? So what is my actual question and where did that come from? And if we're taking a step back, really giving yourself space to identify, what is it that I'm feeling? Was it something about what this person or individual said? Was it something about how I feel in this space? Is it something about my progress and or lack thereof, right? What is causing me to wonder if this is the fit for me? And really giving yourself permission to be honest about that, like not coloring in your honest thoughts and feelings with a story or version that you feel is more acceptable, but being transparent with yourself about where you're at truly. That is very important. And then another thing to consider once you've given yourself space to unpack that is, how have I discussed this with my provider, right? How have I given myself space to bring my thoughts and feelings to their attention so that they can give me feedback, that we can talk about how I'm feeling, so that I have the weight of that information to move through my decision-making process as well. This step is very important. It's very important. And I say that because if we take a step back for a moment and think about the therapeutic relationship, therapy is a neutral space for you to talk about you, right? So everything is about you, everything is for you. If it's not, that's something to consider. That is a red flag for sure as to if you need a new therapist or not. And that's not to say that you can't like make conversation or maybe know some things about your provider, but ultimately it's not about them, it's about you. And that's where everything needs to trend to. And so that is not the case though for every relationship in your life, right? The relationship is not about you specifically, right? But about getting to know and being in reciprocal community with this particular person or people. And so when you experience conflict in daily life, depending on your temperament, depending on your understanding of conflict, that is normal or not, you might not feel okay to voice your thoughts and feelings, to be transparent about where you're at, to ask for what you need. And so what better place to practice communication, especially around your wants, needs, thoughts, and feelings, than therapy. And so when you're having a conflict, especially when that conflict is in line with your therapist and concerns you're having about the therapeutic relationship or the therapeutic process, it is very valuable to bring that to them, because it gives you an opportunity to be able to practice your skills, And everybody is human, right? And that includes your therapist. And so that doesn't mean that everybody is in their same place in their journey or level of self-knowledge and all that great stuff. And your therapist is aware that they are human and able to change and grow too, right? And so when you bring feedback to them, it helps them to be able to sharpen their tools, to be in line with you and where you're at truly. And so it's really valuable for your therapeutic relationship, for your practice and the skills, and for being able to move through this question, right? When is it time for a new therapist? And when you have this conversation with your provider, depending on where you've come to it from, right? Is it how I'm feeling about the sessions or in the sessions? My concern with my progress is something about this person that is triggering or upsetting to me, right? You can then see how or if this person is able to adjust to help meet the need that is my concern, and or are they able to be accountable? Are they able to hear me, register what I'm saying, and provide support in the way that I need to be supported? And so that is a really important step that I think sometimes people often kind of run away from or take a step. You basically be running. Not you specifically, but people in general. And it's like, I get the temptation, like it's easier if I don't have to deal with it. And really, if that is how you're handling conflict, what are you resolving? And something else I think is really helpful to consider, this may or may not have anything to do ultimately with if it's time for a new therapist or not. Well, actually, it has a lot to do with it. But something to consider is, how am I doing implementing the skills that I'm learning, right? How am I doing? And is that a part of our process, right? Do we come and talk and I come away with actionable steps that I am to take to help myself, right? Do I have some type of plan or routine that I'm implementing in my daily life that is helping me to grow, right? So how am I actually implementing the skills that we are learning? Am I learning skills? And what is my consistency like? Because the process of change is not something that happens overnight. It happens over time with intention. And so therapy is a great resource, and depending on who you are and where you're at in your level of care, you're having therapy maybe once a week, maybe twice a week if you need to, once every 2 or 3 weeks, once a month, depending on where you're at in your own personal journey and the level of support that you need and is medically necessary. And so, and that is like if you are utilizing insurance, there are certain limits to how often you can be seen based on your actual demonstrated need. And so you are having a very limited time in your therapy space, but you're living your life all of the time, right? So if there's 24 hours in a day, 7 days in the week, you're getting one of those hours for therapy. Therapy is not the end all be all for your life, right? Meaning therapy is definitely where your processing happens, where you can unpack, where you can feel heard, where you can feel supported, and your daily life is where the change takes place. It's in you showing up for you and implementing the things that are being talked about. And so it's really important that you are giving yourself space to do that, because it's not going to happen just in that session. You can come through a lot of breakthrough and understanding and self-reflection, which is great and really important. And you need space to practice outside of that. And you're living your life way more than in that hour, maybe a week, that you're spending in therapy. And so that is something to really consider. How am I following through in my daily life, in my moment by moment, showing up for me? And then something else to consider, how am I doing being open to feedback? How am I doing receiving feedback, right? Does my provider challenge me at all in any way? Am I always correct? And or do I receive feedback that helps me to think about what is happening in a different way, in a way that expands my mindset, in a way that challenges my preconceived notions, right? Am I giving room for that? Is that a part of the process? Because it's very tempting to believe that your thoughts, feelings, and ideas are the ultimate truth, right? And your thoughts, feelings, and ideas are important, and it's necessary to know and understand them, and yet they are particular to yourself as a person and your own lived experience. And so yes, we need to be able to understand them and relate to them, and we need to be able to take a pause and step back to consider other things, because your mind and your perspective are based on your lived experience, and a lot of us have been through things that weren't great, right? And so that impacts how you perceive, it impacts how you see yourself, it impacts how you think of yourself, it impacts what you believe you are going to receive from a situation, and therefore how you operate in that situation, right? And so we need to be able to take space to challenge things, because while your feelings, thoughts, beliefs are important, they are not necessarily law, right? And having a feeling or a thought about a thing doesn't mean that that is what gets to determine how you move through that thing, right? Because maybe you don't want to feel that anymore. And so when you're able to challenge that, then you can move through it towards what you do want to feel, right? But we need to start with the truth of where we're at. So that's something to consider as well. Am I being open to feedback? So the question that we were grappling with today: how do I know when it's time for a new therapist? And the things that I would encourage you to think about: how much time have I given myself to build rapport with them? What are the things that have happened that are making me question if this is a good fit for me? How have I brought my questions, or how have I brought my feelings about the therapeutic relationship to the therapist themselves? And what about that conversation has helped the dynamic at all, right? Has anything shifted by what I was able to bring to their... How am I doing and implementing the skills that I'm learning? Am I learning skills in this session? Am I being receptive and open to feedback? Am I being receptive and open to feedback? Because that is very important. We're not always right, and that is okay. And I will say that I'm a therapist who has been to therapy, and so I have definitely had to grapple with some of these questions. And I will say that I am a person who has at least a time or two not felt like having the conversation. I'm just, it's okay to be like who you are and where you are and be transparent. And so if you just don't want to go, then don't go. And recognize that this is an opportunity for you to practice a skill set that's really important to your life. And so why not? Why not? You can learn or learn. So I hope something resonated with you. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to add them. I really think that this is a very important question. It's a question that a lot of us have, but don't necessarily give space to ask it, or maybe don't know where to ask the question. And so please let me know if you have any things that you would like to hear my perspective on. I hope something resonated with you, and I hope you do something today that really shows up for you, that causes you to feel centered and grounded within yourself.